And I think that leads us on quite nicely to our next speaker, who is Robert Demare, who is the Global Head of Learning and Development at Deutsche Post. Robert is responsible for organizational learning and leadership development in Deutsche Post's IT function. And over the past 20 years, Robert has been working in the field of organizational learning in both Canada and Europe, is currently pursuing his doctorate of education through the University of Pennsylvania's Chief Learning Officer program. Robert currently lives in Prague, Czechoslovakia, so I can't think of anyone better qualified to talk about cross-border capability. Welcome.
Czech Republic, my colleagues would give you trouble for saying that. Thanks, everyone, and good morning. To start out, this is kind of a cool presentation for me because it's, I think, the first time I've ever presented to a group of people about SFIA where I didn't have to explain what SFIA is at the beginning, and so it's really great to sort of build on that. So what I'd like to do is really tell you a little bit about our story at DPDHL and how we've implemented SFIA. It's really been a story that's evolved over the past 2 or 3 years. And we've right now, I would say that story has accelerated quite a bit within the last 8 months. And I'll really take you through that, what we did, what we developed. But I think the most important thing is I'd like to share with you what we learned. And if we knew that when we started, I would give advice. So any of you who are kind of starting this journey, I'd really like to sort of give you the benefit. And again, if we don't get time in questions offline, I'm happy to share anything that I can with you. So. First of all, to give you a little bit of a background of the company, DPDHL, it's a pretty huge company. Just gives you a bit of the sense of the numbers. We're one of the largest employers of the world, 500,000 people globally. A little bit of the sense, DHL, you probably know we get stuff there fast, but we also run the entire German post office. We have a big supply chain business. We do global forwarding, that kind of thing. So very big company. And the history of that company is it grew a lot about 10 years ago through acquisitions. So we acquired a lot of different IT functions from different companies, which made an incredibly messy environment for our IT people to start to bring together. And that's been a big part of our journey. So the situation. We have an IT function. I'm responsible for learning and development in what we call IT services, which is basically a centralized function, and that's the one at the bottom there, and we provide services to the business divisions of the company. So we're like a shared service. Interestingly, for a lot of our when we build new applications, we actually compete against external companies to, hopefully win business for DPDHL. Most of the sort of hosting and running of things we do ourselves, but it's an interesting situation in that we have to actually compete for business in the group, but we're not allowed to go outside the group. So puts us in an interesting situation. Give you a sense of our IT people. We have about 3,200 people globally. I work in a building with 75 nationalities in Prague. It's a really great place to get to know a lot of people from all over the world. And we have our biggest locations are in Cyberjaya, Malaysia, Prague. We've got a couple of locations in Germany and other people scattered around Europe that actually do kind of the desktop support and that kind of thing. But over the past few years, we've really centralized this into data centers. So our current situation. Our employees couldn't understand the career model, 3,200 people. So you can imagine when you bring together all these IT functions, and the data centers used to operate very regionally. I always ask our employees when we do a briefing on SFIA, I say, how many job titles do you think we had 18 months ago? And so 3,200 people. Anyone want to take a guess? Sorry? Yeah. Actually, you see, you know what this is. Most people guess like, 200, something like that. So here's an example. About 500 And so you have these core, we had, people that sort of did exactly the same thing when we really looked at it. But what we found is they were called different things in all the different locations. And so when employees were trying to look at how they could develop themselves and their careers, it was just a spaghetti mess to try and figure out what our career paths look like. So this is just one example, but there are lots I could show out. This is a consulting. And what we found is that organizations like to tailor the titles within their particular department, sometimes out of a bit of fear that, if we call them a project manager, someone's going to create a central project management function and take our people away. So we need to sort of call them, tactical or a technical implementation manager or something else. And that was one thing we found, and one of the big breakthroughs we had is that, hey, we can have common roles in different parts of the organization, and they don't have to be in one organization, but we can actually develop those people in the same way. With that came all kinds of role profiles, and when we set up our IT function, we had, when we set up Prague, I think in 2004, we built that place up so quickly that I think some people would just say, we got to hire a person, someone quickly write a role profile. And literally that's what we had up until about a year ago, was something that someone wrote. And so we had literally 500 of these sort of descriptions that were all written in completely different ways. And that was one of the things that led us to SFIA. Development. I loved what you said about developing people not just based on go to training. So Sarah, that was great. But that's where we were at. We looked at individual development plans of people, and it was all go on training courses, blah, 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 training, training, training. Instead of looking at, how do you actually develop that skill? And, all the research around how people learn is you have to get in and do it. So we need to describe the things that people do, which SFIA has really helped us to define. So here's what we did. We basically, where's Peter Leather, by the way? Hey, I just wanted to say hi because I hadn't seen you yet. Peter, way back at the beginning of this, gave me a great piece of advice, and he said, as much of this as you can do yourself, please, do it, because you'll get a lot of benefit if you can engage your organization in implementing SFIA. And we basically did this all ourselves. No offense to all of you that are consultants out there. I think it's going to add a lot of value, but we actually decided to sort of take this on completely ourselves. We maybe, made some mistakes along the way and maybe didn't do it quite as quickly, but I think there was some real benefits through that. So this is a quick kind of picture of what our 500, actually this isn't all of them. This would represent probably about 300 of those titles, I think. Yeah. We're still adding job families across the way, but we've been able to really centralize a lot of our roles into a set of career paths. And so this represents the different job families. A big aha for people was when they realized that this isn't organizations, this is sort of job families in a way you can develop. We now have embedded SFIA within our role profiles as a core part of the role profile. We have a DPDHL competency model that covers behavioral stuff, and then we've added SFIA to cover the professional side, and then there's some other work we're doing to kind of get into the technical skill detail. We developed 41 career guides, little one-pagers for SFIA skills, and we took some of the stuff we found in the SFIA Plus framework. We kind of looked at trying to look at the kind of development steps you could find in different locations as well, and we really based it on the sort of 70-20-10 model. So those of you in kind of an organizational learning functions, the idea that 70% of your learning should be stuff you do in your job. So we really tried to say, how can you stretch yourself through things you do? So, we'll have things like, instead of going a training course, they would be participate in a service review with the business. Shadow that, lead it at the higher levels. So you're actually looking at tasks that stretch you, other people that can help you with that. And then finally, we do map in the learning. And we've taken, for example, all our e-learning and kind of mapped it into here as well. We also set up a little kind of website. We actually did this ourselves. It's a pretty simple little tool where you sort of pick your role, and then what you can do is look at the skills in the role, and you can actually pick a second role and kind of compare the two together. One thing you'll notice here, if you've got a sharp eye, we have one skill here that's not in SFIA. And I know some would argue that it belongs in the sort of technical, organizational specific realm, but we found it was so important for us to develop the business knowledge that we actually put it in this framework because it's something that is actually mapped to every single job that we have, or role. And I should be careful to say role, because we really think about these SFIA roles as hats you can wear, and we do encourage that you can develop more than one, in a way, in this sort of flexible workforce idea. When you get into the portal, you can click on the skill. It links right to the A to Z skill reference. We even found one in German as well. It was great, because German's really, really important for our company. It's Deutsche Post, DHL. So, and you can click on and find the role profile, and then you can go right to the development guide as well. And this is something we've just launched both in English and German. And then we've done a big kind of awareness campaign that we're really focusing on employee development and really taking charge of your own career. DPDHL has a core competency. It applies to every employee, and we only have 5 core competencies. One of them is developing self. And we really, really stress this idea that it is, in order to be successful in this company, you have to drive and be the pilot in your career development. The manager and the organization are there as support pillars, but you really have to drive that. So this is one of the ways we're weaving in the SFIA message in this developing self. And so you can see the little wheel there is one of our core competencies. How do you do that? You can use SFIA to help you do that. Okay, so what did we learn? I'm going to give you, I think, 8 things here, and I'm going to try and weave in a couple of things that feedback I got from other people in our organization after I submitted this to Lucy. So have to spend a lot of time explaining to people over and over again what is SFIA. What is it about? What's it there for? Especially colleagues in HR, actually. It's funny, I work in HR, but actually found that we maybe made some early assumptions that, you know, the HR people would get this really quickly, and we actually found we had to kind of take a couple steps back and make sure they really understood what this is for. So there, a few of these kind of conversations happened. So I don't know if I heard some of you smiling. I saw some of you smiling there, so maybe. Pick the right team. When we started SFIA, we really picked organizations that really had a champion, the head of an organization that wanted to run it. Some of you who are involved in ITSMF might know a guy named John Sowerby. He works with us, and he was actually that person in one of their organizations when we wanted to roll out to our entire run side of the organization. We started with him because he was a very engaged sponsor. I mean, I guess it's basic kind of change management stuff a lot of you would be familiar with, but definitely applies here. We also had that sponsor appoint a lead, and we specifically said we want someone who's going to be passionate about this, who's really interested in doing this, and we've got a lot of those people. John appointed a guy named Stephen Hawkins, who is just amazing at helping us drive this through. Oh, someone knows Stephen? Do you know? Okay. And then we support the process, and we guide them through it. And believe me, the time to implement SFIA in a part of our organization has gone from this to sort of this, because we've just learned so much about how to kind of drive the project forward. It also has helped that our organization has it's become more of a buzzword. People know it. It's had that sort of viral awareness in the organization that's really helped each implementation get a little bit faster. Get ready for this question. So I meet the description of the level above me now. Can you promote me? Yesterday, I had this discussion with a group of employees. We were doing it. And so you just get used to answering the standard answer is like, in order for a promotion to happen, you need to have a business need for the position, and it needs to be vacant. And then you need to have the successful person for the role. But it's amazing how many people in the organization kind of have this idea that somehow an organization can just promote everyone when they're ready. One of the things we've tried to do with SFIA is through having this sort of diagram. I'm sorry, I'm going back too far here. Having this picture is people see more possibilities when those vacant positions come up. So, sorry. Okay. So this is, you know, I don't know how many times I've had to sort of give these 3 bullets. And it works and people get it. But leverage what SFIA has. I mean, we've tried as much as possible to actually take it as is and use it that way. And people have really, you know, it's gone over quite well. I think early in the process, I was reading a lot about different organizations that did a lot of tailoring. I read the Gartner paper on it. And we've actually tried to use it as much as possible as is, especially because we have to do everything in German as well. And as soon as you start having all these different descriptions and versions of it, it gets enormously complicated. So we're really thankful that we have this available in German, because if any of you have had to sort of implement HR stuff in Germany, it can be a little bit tricky. And having stuff already translated into German is really great, because you must translate it. It's not an option to just have it in English. So, also, it gets away from the kind of not invented here. I have to say, maybe it's a bit of a secret, I've been able to leverage this is an industry framework a lot, and it kind of shuts people up, and maybe I shouldn't. I think this is being recorded and going on the internet or something, so I have to be careful here. But actually that's really worked, and it's stopped a lot of let's tweak the wording here and things like that. It's been really useful to do that. And it gets away from it being like, oh, someone in Prague built this, or someone in Malaysia, or someone, Germany organization, head office put this together. It's an industry framework. So we've really opened up a lot of transparency in our organization by doing this. It's a bit scary. People, even on the HR team, were a little bit like, we're going to just show the career map like that. People are going to know. You're going to actually show what the kind of grades are. And we say, yeah, it is. People know anyway. So we did this, and it goes away really quickly. Once you sort of, show people that, then people really appreciate the transparency. Oh, and this is the other one. Yeah, if you make the career path so transparent, my people will leave. Literally, we get that question. And one of the things we try to encourage managers to do, that, hey, if you're developing talent and people are leaving and getting, people are going to want to work for you. So, we have used this as a way to align job titles as well. So we've taken all those 500 and we've tried to really bring them down. If you're ever implementing SFIA in Asia, do not underestimate how important job titles are. It's more important than money. I'm not kidding. It's really, we have to be very, very sensitive. In many cases, we've actually aligned the global titles with what they were doing in Cyberjaya, Malaysia. Because it just, in the other regions, they didn't really care that much. It was kind of like, well, if you call me a consultant or a specialist, it's okay. But it was a big deal in our Cyberjaya area. And you just can't ignore that. And I think we made a couple of hiccups earlier on where we kind of said, okay, we're going to change it to this, and then got a lot of noise. This is a great one. I just want you to stop and read this slide carefully for a second. this is real. So, yeah, I was copied on this. I don't think they intended to copy me on it, but I was on February 18th. This is a real email. I've eliminated to protect the guilty or innocent, however you say. But, I mean, you will run into this kind of thing where, you know, some places they're just, well, we want to get our people promoted. They don't necessarily have a business requirement to have the more senior roles, so they, you know, suggesting that let's dumb down the profile so that it's easier to get people. We do a sort of promotion panel process, so there's a bit more transparency around who we promote. It's not just one person's decision to escalate. They have to actually, you know, go to a group of peers and say, I want to promote this person. So, but anyway, interesting one. Learning how to talk about gaps. We talk a lot about gaps in SFIA, and we've learned how to sort of describe this for people in a bit of a different way. That, you know, there are things listed there, and you might have a gap because you haven't done it before. And that's not that your performance is bad, it's that you just need to build that experience. And so what we've really tried to do is, you know, say, hey, it's okay to have a gap. We do have that one competency called developing self, and the way we link this to performance is the idea that if you completely ignore developing your professional skills, then that's not good on your developing self. But if you have a particular little gap in one of the areas, hey, that's normal, let's work on it, let's find ways to develop that. So we've kind of really found ways to kind of look at this. Okay, I'm probably running a little over, am I? Okay, I'm okay. Okay, cool. So I'm almost actually, I think at the end here. I wanted to just show you one thing that happened along the way with SFIA. And maybe I'll pass on another little quick tips. We use the general, to any one role, we said maximum 6. I think we've had 7 in one case, 6 SFIA skills. We've kind of taken that advice. A couple years ago when we were starting this, the architects wanted 24. Yeah, you've probably been through that. So, but we've also kept it, we've said, hey, there's 6 recommended for a role, but nothing is out of bounds. We've really wanted to do this to promote better development conversations. So one thing we don't do with this, we don't roll up all this information. We really focus it on a better discussion between a manager and an employee around their development. And at this point, we haven't kind of decided, oh, we're going to assess everyone and kind of roll it up. There are definitely voices that want to do that. There's definitely some voices, you know, in some countries it's kind of difficult to do that. I know in Germany it's a bit of a, you know, as soon as you start analyzing skill data, it's a very long process to kind of approve that. But we've said at this point, really better conversation between employee and the manager. And what we've had the feedback on is managers have even said they're using these development guides and they come to their IDP, individual development planning meeting, and they have a really well thought out IDP already prepared, and it's great. It sort of saves me time. I don't have to challenge them on it so much because it's really well thought out. So early benefits. As we've been doing this, we've been talking a lot around development is not training. Training is a component of development, but it's actually a more minor component of development. So this is actually kind of a cool little statistic that I can show that's happened during our SFIA journey. We do an annual employee opinion survey. We use Connexa for that. I know they're here. So we ask a question. DPDHL gives me an opportunity for learning and development. That has increased from 64 to 78% favorable, which means the employee says strongly agree or agree to that. At the same time, we've reduced our spending per head. And I know this is a bit of a misleading graph because we're using different scales and everything, but if you add up 3,000 employees towards, you know, 100 euros, it's a big chunk of money in a way, but we're actually getting, the employees are perceiving that we're developing them more, although we're actually spending less money on kind of hard training in a way. So, so that's kind of a cool early benefit we're getting. We're going to be doing some other measures this year to kind of look at some additional benefits that we're getting from people. So, so that's, I'll take some questions if there's a bit of time.
Yeah, time for a few questions.
Wow. Really? It was like, I gave you everything? It was like...
In that case...
Wow, okay.
I mean, it was a very comprehensive presentation.
Okay, cool.
Robert, I really wouldn't take the lack of questions as being a reflection that people fell asleep during your presentation. I thought that was an excellent example of one other flavor that I don't think we've really touched on that much in previous conferences, which is the organizational change. You really started to touch on how do I engage, how do I get leadership, how do I get champions in place, how do I talk to people, how do I get personal ownership of my career, which is a big thing for me, is actually driving this and putting an organization in place that supports people to do that. The point I put here, the job families thing, of starting to get people comfortable with their job family and they can then put on different hats and work around the organization, starts to get us back this recurring theme, flexible organizations. I love the 70-20-10. I'm sure the learning departments will be interested in this, especially the people who are churning out courses, to get people much more comfortable that, certainly for me personally, I learn much more by doing things underpinned by some good skills training, but really to cement this and put mentoring and coaching programs so that other people are willing to help me through those early stages on the assumption that I'm going to help other people. So I think that's a big cultural thing again there. That competency of developed self, which comes back to the fact that this is about me. It's my career, and I really want to recognize that I come to Deutsche Post because they give me opportunity, they show me growth paths, they make me aware early on that I can't get promoted unless there's a business opportunity, because if I do that, I'm actually going to have to reduce my headcount because I'm promoting and paying people above what the business can afford. So people need to be aware, and I think you made the point about adding that business dimension to it as well. Use of champions. Two other things that I really picked out of that was keep it simple, which I think has got to be a mantra. I've also used the 6, and I've challenged where people wanted 7. It's always the architects, by the way. And they want to reword it, and it wasn't quite the right skills. And if they've got 24, they'd really like 25. Is to challenge them, what will you do with that information? If I let you have 24, what are you going to do that you wouldn't do with 6? So start simple. I thought that was excellent. I think it really brings to a conclusion this first half of the morning. I really think it brought it alive for me, that this isn't about the UK. This is a generic IT issue. You started to allude to some of the things. There is something different maybe in Prague. There's different in Germany, different with different cultures. Interestingly, most organizations have multiple cultures. So there are different sensitivities of how we drive this thing through.